Welcome to episode 2 of the Disc Golf Doctor. Last time we discussed why we're doing this in the first place. We went over the X step, we went over a drill to practice that, and we went over exercises to work on shoulder stabilization. Today, what we really want to focus on is what happens after the X step. How do we begin our movement, and how do we maintain consistency and accuracy with our throws? How do we develop power? It's a mistake that almost everyone makes when they're learning, and you see even the pros struggle with at times. Something we really need to practice, and if you're going to take anything away from this series, this might be the most important thing. We're going to have a couple good drills to add in, some exercises to start working on core strength. One of the most important things when it comes to disc golf. Very underappreciated, but that's really where our power comes from. Our lower extremities, our hips, our core. So we're going to start out with some basic exercises that we'll progress from. Last time we established that we want to start with an X step, end up in this position here, with our feet right in line with our target, the disc opposing that, and our chin down, with our hips slightly turned away from the target. What we want to focus on now is what happens from here. The most important thing is to keep our line consistent all the way throughout the throw. All the way through. Okay, the big mistake that almost every beginner makes is instead of keeping this line consistent, as we come through here, they end up rounding out the shoulders, and they end up being in a curved line, and that really wrecks all consistency. Disc golf is a game where you need power and consistency. If you have those two things, you're probably going to win. So what's the most consistent thing? A straight line. Otherwise, if I round my shoulders, right, a lot of people refer to this as rounding, I'm having to guess as to when to let go because now I'm in a curved shape with my disc. If I'm back here and I keep the disc very close to my body, I can keep that as a nice straight line. I never have to guess as to when to let go. I really shouldn't be thinking about that. There's so many variables in disc golf. We want to minimize how many variables we're playing with. Okay? Otherwise, I'm having to think of, okay, what angle do I reach back at what height? How fast do I turn? When do I let go? There's so many things that we're trying to think of. If we can minimize it and say, I'm just going to pull back straight and stay straight with my line, then I don't have to think about when to release the disc. I'm going to be far more consistent out of my hand. There's a few mistakes people tend to make. One simple one is people end up getting their feet perhaps in the right position. Their target is straight this way, and they want to get a lot of extra power. So what they do is they reach around this way, and then they try bringing the disc through, and again they have to guess when to let go to stay in their target. A lot of times they end up throwing an accidental anhyzer off to the right. They might end up releasing too early, trying to compensate. They just lose that consistency, and they don't actually gain the power typically. Where your power truly comes from is from your lower extremities, your hips, your core. And that's what some of our exercises are really going to focus on coming up. Because as we come through, if I do this, I'm getting all my power through my lower extremities, shifting my weight, turning my hips, and not so much from my arm and my chest turning, okay? The other mistakes people tend to make are, again, setting up perhaps in this good position here. They start to come through, and they're coming away from their body here. You lose a lot of power keeping it away from your body, because then I'm using this long, what we call lever arm. You don't get nearly as much force out of that as if I take the arm in here and pull across. Think about the last time you started a lawnmower. If you went to go pull a lawnmower and did this, would that be really easy or really hard? Obviously, what would be so much easier is pulling back like that. That's really the motion you want to think about when you're in this position. Here, and I'm pulling my elbow through like I'm hitting something. Okay? And I'm keeping that disc close to my body. If you listen to guys like Schustrick, Lazat, they all say they are almost trying to hit their body with the disc as they come through. They're trying to keep it as close as possible, so they keep that straight line and they gain a lot of power. The other mistake people tend to make is with their head. When they're in this position, you see people do this in disc golf, you see people do this in golf. As they come through here, they want to see where their disc is, and they pick up their head. What does that do to my shoulders as I pick up my head? It opens up my shoulders to the target, rounds my shoulders, and I come off over here. You really want to keep your shoulders perpendicular to your target until you're starting to come through this, what they call impact zone, as I'm coming closer to releasing it. Okay, because if I come through and I release here, again, I'm keeping this straight line, my shoulders are right in line with my target. As soon as I open up my chest, I'm going to pull it off to the right. So what you really want to do is have your left shoulder kind of almost pull your head up at the end. Don't worry about where the disc is going. Have someone else watch where your disc is going. You're going to come through here, step back like this. I'm going to follow through, and this left shoulder is going to bring my head up with it. Really focus on the head down. If you boil it down to things to think about, you're going to keep your disc close to your body as you come through, driving back with your elbow, keeping your head down, and then coming on up. I promise you'll get a lot more distance and consistency if you do those two things. Close to your body, keeping your head down. 2 drills today. First one we want to focus on is keeping the head down. We already have the X step down. Once we get into that stance, we want to practice pulling through using the left arm to pull our head up. Second drill we can do, and this is really only if you have something to do it with, is to practice getting that power pulling through with your arm like we talked about. We can try some other exercises for strengthening. If you had something like a punching bag, sorry for all the disarray here, but if we practice doing an X step and coming through and hitting with your elbow, that's going to have you practice getting where you have that power from, okay? Hopefully it doesn't fall. So we're going to go over 2 fairly basic core exercises. I was debating for a while what to do on this episode, but when it comes down to it, core strengthening is just so critical for disc golf, both for injury prevention for your back and also for power. So we want to start out with some simple ones that are, we would term non-functional exercises, non-weight-bearing exercises, and as we gain some basic strength in those muscles, trying to progress to more movement-specific exercises that mimic the way we throw the disc. The first exercise is called a posterior pelvic tilt. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm showing you that I have some space between my back and the floor, and I'm flattening out my back and then pressing my back down into the floor. It engages several of those abdominal muscles, particularly transverse abdominis. All I'm doing is distinguishing between 2 different movements, flattening out the back and then pressing down, drawing my belly button down towards my spine. The other one is just doing a simple crunch, curling my chin down towards my chest, lifting up my head and shoulders, reaching up towards my knees. With both exercises, make sure to have your knees bent up. That's critical. You could go a little bit higher than I'm going, but you want to get all the motion in the thoracic spine, not your lower back. One thing I have noticed that kind of pertains to what we were just talking about with form the last 2 episodes that I wanted to address, because maybe some people have questions about this, is when you do look at some of the pros throw the disc, they don't always have their feet lining up exactly with their target. I think it's helpful for accuracy, particularly if you're really trying to get nice, consistent throws, particularly with amateurs. It makes sense to keep the feet right in line. When you watch a lot of them throw, even if they're throwing straight, oftentimes they're running from the back right of the tee pad up to the front left. And if anything, if you drew a line from their feet, it would be pointing off to the left, but their arm is pointing straight back towards or back away from their target. And so they're getting their consistency by still keeping the disc in a straight line as they're coming through there. But I think that what they're doing is they're by stepping across, they're able to turn their hips a little bit more, hoping to get a little more power. I'd still suggest probably keeping the feet straight, getting a nice straight line for consistency's sake.
but I did want to address that there is some variety in the way people throw the disc, and just because I'm saying that it would be very consistent doesn't mean that there aren't alternatives. Thanks for joining us here on the Disc Golf Doctor. We have a lot more to talk about, to learn. Please tune in. Should be having another episode next week. Take care.